when I was around that age, I think 11 or 12, so it would have been in the 90s, the early 90s, I was really getting into football, and I supported Manchester United, and they had a player called Eric Cantona. So he was a great player, but he was also a bit of a rebel. He was always getting into trouble and saying controversial things and speaking out, very passionately about certain things. And I really remember being drawn to him as an outsider potentially, and somebody who was a bit misunderstood. So he was one of my probably earliest role models, I think.
Welcome to another episode of the Journey Podcast. The Journey Podcast is all about sharing the journeys of purpose-driven individuals from all walks of life who are following their passion and fulfilling the purpose in their own unique way. And I'm your host, Reshma Karia, and my pronouns are she and her. In today's episode, I'm having a conversation with Reshma Karia, who is a leadership and executive coach and mental health employment advisor. Reshma brings a background in mental health, mindfulness, and therapeutic approaches to her coaching. So Reshma is actually my coach, and she works with Black, Asian, and minority ethnic colleagues in the organization I work in. And I have been working with her for over 6 months now. So in this episode, the role has been reversed, and I enjoyed asking her lots of questions. In this episode, she shares the story of being a rebel growing up, her love for football, trying to find a sense of belonging, and her passion for working with people, and why she wants to work with leaders and potential leaders. I hope you'll find her journey inspiring. Enjoy! Hi Reshma, welcome to the Journey Podcast. I'm very, very excited to have you here and hear all about your journey. I will be recording an intro as well, but you are my coach. So today it's kind of the roles been reversed.
Yeah.
So I'll be asking questions, whereas usually you'll be asking me lots of questions, sometimes uncomfortable questions that I need to answer. So I'm really excited to ask you lots of questions today.
Me too. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you for coming onto my podcast. Firstly, I just wanted to check in before we start. How are you feeling today? And also, it would be really lovely to hear where you are joining from as well.
Of course. So today I am glad it's Friday. I'm very much looking forward to the weekend. I feel good. And I'm based in my home in Mile End, London. So I'm joining from my home.
Lovely.
And you might get a visit from a cat, but
yes, your cat is welcome, and I know I see your cat sometimes during our coaching session as well, which is nice, kind of nice pause and nice distraction to have. Thank you. So, firstly, I would love for you to share a little bit about your background and anything you like to share with listeners about growing up and your early years.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in the UK in a town called Northampton in the Midlands, to my parents who are both immigrants, actually from Uganda. My family originate from India, and my parents were born in Uganda and arrived here during the 70s. I think it was 72, after Idi Amin cleansed Uganda. So they arrived to the UK in the 70s as refugees. So I'm first generation born in this country. I have two siblings, and I'm a middle child. So that's a little bit about my sort of cultural background. And then, yeah, generally quite a I don't know, normal standard upbringing in the 80s. A lot of it was around having dual cultural identities. So a lot around finding my place and identity, growing up, with the influence of two cultures. So yeah, that's a little bit about my early years.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I didn't realize that you were from Northampton, actually.
Oh, really? Do you know it?
um, so I wanted to ask a few questions around
Mm.
being a middle child. So you
Mm.
mentioned you're a middle child, and I remember interviewing one of my friends on the podcast earlier on, and he was also, well, he is also a middle child.
Uh-huh.
And so being a middle child and having dual culture, as you
Mhm.
mentioned as well,
Mhm.
and being a first generation, what was it like? I guess like growing up and at school, what was it like with
Mm.
your siblings? And so, did
Mm.
your parents speak English at all, or did they have to learn when they come over?
I think they spoke English, but in our household, we grew. So before I started school, I believe I could only speak Gujarati, which is the language that my parents spoke mainly in the house. And I
Mm,
do remember one of my earliest memories actually is of being in a nursery or a play group and just not being able to find the words for certain things. So that was the first awareness of, difference.
mm,
Um, um, and then in terms of siblings, so I have, yeah, two siblings, one either side, one 2 years older, one 2 years younger. We are all very close now, but I think my experience of growing up as a middle child was very much, um, hmm, I remember, I don't know if this was just kind of in me, but I was always a bit of a rebel.
mm,
And I don't know if that was my way of getting attention because perhaps I felt I had to compete for attention. So that was one of the ways in which it kind of impacted on me. Um, and what else? Yeah, I think always just feeling like I had to fight for attention and space, I think.
mm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And is that at home mainly or outside of home environment as well? Were you more of a rebel and trying to fight for your kind of existence and space?
Very much so. I think it started in the family, but then I think it did kind of come with me in other um, areas of life. So, peer groups, I always had a feeling of maybe being an outsider or having to um, prove myself in some way. Um, and I think even throughout my early 20s, really, I very much had that feeling of, being a rebel, being an outsider. Um, so it did follow me. It did sort of mirror um, other situations that I, was in sort of during my early adult years also.
Mm,
So it did have
yes.
quite a profound impact.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm jumping ahead a little, but do you
No, not
feel like that right now, like recent
no.
years or no?
No, actually, I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like I've definitely found my place in life in terms of like my friendship group and my work, and I very much feel a sense of belonging actually which is quite different. But I think I've had to do a lot of work to get to that stage, but very much, let's say from a young age until maybe even my 30s or late 20s, I was battling, or really, I felt that I had to work harder to find my place and feel a sense of belonging. Yeah.
Yeah, and so just going back to your kind of childhood again. Sorry, I'm jumping
Hmm.
to
That's okay.
so I guess, at school, and did you have a community when you were growing up, like from a similar cultural background and people that you can speak to?
Yes. So my parents were very active in the community. So we had they had lots of friends, and we attended a Saturday school to learn our mother language, Gujarati. And so we had a sense of community there, and my parents were also involved. So there was that cultural influence from a very young age. And then, I recall, I think when I was sort of going more towards secondary school, I felt myself wanting to move away from those cultural influences and find my own identity and space, I think. So one of the first, I think, challenges I experienced around, I remember from a young age, my sisters and I went to Indian classical dancing classes. And we would perform and be involved in performances and stuff like that. And I can't remember how old I was when I wanted to stop going to the classical dancing classes and take up football instead. And I remember this was a real source of tension, or for my parents, really. So that was when it started to play out, I believe, when I was about 11 or 12. Me sort of trying to move away from that community, not the community as such, but just finding my own space and identity.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you enjoy football? So
Yeah, I'll come. Hopefully, I'll come on to that a bit later.
okay.
But I did. I was quite good at playing football, actually, and it would have been about 25 years ago. So I think women's football was not as popular or prominent as it is now. And so there were a lot more challenges in, being able to play football. And I remember at school insisting, I was quite a rebel, and I liked to challenge things that I felt were unjust or unfair. And I remember really fighting and getting a group of girls together and fighting to have our own football team and our own football practice. So I was very I had to fight for that opportunity to play football. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's amazing that you've kind of been, yeah, very kind of activist. I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
right word that you would use, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, campaigning for your right to play
Yeah.
football. That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So growing up, did you have any role models that you like looked up to or you admire?
Mm. So as I was thinking about this earlier, I was thinking, right, I really had to rack my brain, but then it just seemed really obvious when I was around that age, I think 11 or 12. So it would have been in the 90s, the early 90s. I was really getting into football, and I supported Manchester United, and they had a player called Eric Cantona. I don't know if you've heard of him. No.
No, don't.
Um, so he was a great player, but he was also a bit of a rebel. He was always getting into trouble and saying controversial things and speaking out, very passionately about certain things. And I really remember being drawn to him as an outsider potentially, and somebody who was a bit misunderstood. So he was one of my probably earliest role models, I think.
Wow. I have to look up. I'm not,
Yeah,
well, yeah, I don't really know football much, but yeah, no, I definitely gonna look up.
yeah. And he was quite poetic as well. So he was quite
Mm,
artistic, and he had a quite a sort of brooding, sensitive side, which often wasn't seen in Premier League footballers.
mm.
So yeah, he was definitely somebody that I looked up to at that time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's so interesting. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, football related.
I'll send you the name after if you want to look it up.
Yes, please. That would be great. Thank you. So I know you were very passionate about football and you had a footballer as a role model growing up. But did you have any other interests or anything else that you were really passionate about growing up?
Mm. Um, so I used to play netball as well. So generally being really active was quite
Mm,
important to me. I think from my young age, I had a very strong sense that being in my body was really good for me and a really good outlet for any frustrations or pent up, frustrations. So really, really was into sport. I also played netball and represented our school in athletics and netball and stuff like that. Um,
mm,
from a young age as well, I also remember being really into like embroidery and drawing.
mm.
So quite creative, solitary pursuits where I could just sit and be quiet and contemplate and reflect and just, you know, create patterns and colours. And so I remember that. And I also played for the school orchestra. So I used to play the
Wow.
flute. I used to play the flute, and I think up until the age where football started to compete for, my more of my time, I think I gave up the playing in the orchestra. But those were my other interests, and also actually people, which kind of led me to the work that I do. I remember from quite a young age as well, just really being interested in people and often being somebody that my peers, my schoolmates would come to confide in about certain things. So yeah, people was another interest of mine.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I was like listening to like all the interests and the things that you've been doing growing up. I'm like, oh, how does that kind of connect to what you're
Yeah,
doing now? So like, okay, yeah, I understand. But I love that when like, the you were really active and the sport that you were kind of involved in was sounds like it was more like a team sport, so like
yeah,
football, netball. And then you mentioned like the being creative, but like being on your own and like
yeah,
solitary. And so like that's a really nice balance, isn't it? Like being
yeah,
with people and then, and then being on your own and
yeah.
getting creative. And then yeah, I wasn't expecting the music
I know.
as well. So like, oh, that's so interesting, fascinating. Thank you for
I
sharing
know.
all of that.
Thank
Yeah, I love to know. So where did you go from there? So did you go to college and university? What did you study?
hmm Yes, so I studied A levels at school, and then I surprisingly, this will probably surprise you, but I did my degree in banking and international finance. Um, but that kind of competed. I really deep down, I think, wanted to either study psychology or sports science. And my thoughts were if I couldn't be a professional footballer, I'd quite like to be a physiotherapist to professional footballers. So those are my two real passions. But actually, due to, I guess, partly cultural pressures from
Mm,
family, um, I went into banking and finance, which I was quite interested in economics. I did that as an A level, and I was quite good at it. So I thought, okay, I'll do banking. It's steady careers are possible from that. So I ended up studying banking and finance at university, and kind of quickly realizing that it probably wasn't for me. And I finished my degree and went traveling for a year to find myself. So I spent a year backpacking around Australia, where I was really able to kind of have some space to think about where next and what I'm going to do. And actually, I did a complete U-turn. And when I came back to England, I enrolled on a psychodynamic psychotherapy foundation diploma. And that was the beginning of my journey into mental health and psychology and working with people.
Wow, I did not expect your degree choice, to be
I know.
honest. Did you, I know kind of, was it during the university life when you thought it was actually not for you?
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. I think it was
Mm.
partly this feeling of being an outsider, like I don't belong here. But I think it came from a place of realizing that I wanted to do something that, how do I put this, that isn't just making money for a massive corporation, and something that was just a bit more socially minded. So I was starting to get in touch with those values, I think, at that time,
Mm.
and realize. And I think the environment at uni made me realize that, it wasn't for me. Yeah.
Mm. Environment as in the kind of the subject wise or the actual kind of the university environments? Did you
Oh,
was it
both.
for both? Okay.
Yeah, I think I found it very competitive. I think the nature of being in one of the top business schools in the country on one of those degrees, it was very competitive, and I didn't really understand the lack of like collegiality amongst my course mates, and I found that quite difficult. um so partly the course in, the sub partly the university environment, but also I also realized deep down that my strengths were more, not so much with numbers and models, financial
Mm.
models. It was in the sort of less quantitative elements of, I think I realized that I was heavily more inclined that way.
Mm. Yes, yeah. Yeah. And I guess like you need to kind of do it to find
Yeah,
out what is not actually, for it's not actually right for you.
yes,
Otherwise
yeah,
you wouldn't know. So yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And then so you went traveling for a year, which is amazing and so jealous. And then you came back from traveling and then you mentioned that you enrolled on to the foundation course for is it psychodynamic
Yeah, psychodynamic
psychotherapy
psychotherapy,
therapist
yes.
therapy and what was it like kind of studying completely different subject,
Wow.
and I guess it's more people
Yeah,
focused rather than number focused.
yeah, it was. And bearing in mind I was in my early 20s at that time. So I think I was about 23. And the first thing I realized was that most of the people that were on the course were in their 40s, 50s, or beyond. So I was by far the youngest person on the course. Um, so there was something about me feeling, again, a bit out of my depth, and it was quite an intense. You're learning a lot of theory, and a lot of it is about kind of analysing yourself and doing work on yourself, thinking about your own background and upbringing and traumas and challenges and, styles of attachment and things like that. So I learned a lot. But ultimately, I can see why they have a minimum age requirement to do those courses. And although they had interviewed me, to sort of see if I was mature enough, and I did get onto the course, really, I probably was quite young. But I really enjoyed it, and I learned a hell of a lot. So it was theory and practical, and also having your own therapy and also having group therapy was all part of the course. So it's quite intense. But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And how long was the course?
2 years.
2 years, okay. And you did that full time? Well, or were you working part-time? Okay.
Yeah, and working, yes.
Working. Oh, what work were you doing during the study?
Oh, it was I was actually just working in a call center, and then during the summer holidays I would go to like a kids club type activity center and work as a kind of camp instructor over the summer months. So I was doing like those two jobs. Yeah.
Well, the camping one sounds fun.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, really great. Like working with kids, doing, kayaking and abseiling and arts and crafts. So it was really right up my street, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything you loved as growing up as a child. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And so so you've done 2 years course, and what was next for you?
So then after doing my course, I volunteered alongside working as well, just because you have to get your kind of hours of experience. And so I volunteered for a youth charity doing counselling for young people. And then I got into mental health employment advice, kind of by default, but actually it's then what I ended up doing for the next 15 or so years. And that was basically, supporting people into employment who had a long history of mental health problems, many barriers, really far away from the job market, and also working with employers around mental health awareness, making sure that they're equipped to kind of handle or create an environment, that's conducive to well-being and mental health in the workplace, really.
Okay. And so do you do that through like counseling or training or workshop, or is it mixture of those?
All of those things.
Okay.
It's kind of it's an element of coaching, of counseling and advising, which is not very counseling oriented. But so yeah, it's a perfect combination of counseling, listening, really attentively listening, being able to really help the person get in touch with what's holding them back. I've trained in a few different therapies since then as well, but motivational interviewing is one of the things that that helped me really in that role, working with people who are quite stuck and really don't have any sense that they can move forward in any way, but seeing them make progress was actually really really inspiring, and something that I really loved about that work. But I used a number of different things and also workshops. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And what did you say motivational interviewing? Is that like
Yeah,
one of the modalities that you use?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So broadly speaking, it was first developed in working with people who work in the substance misuse field
Mm,
around cessation of smoking, drinking, drugs. Um, so it was developed to work with those clients initially, but then it's been kind of it can be applied to anything really. And what I guess what the idea is it's helping the client get in touch with their motivation
mm,
and also really being able to work with ambivalence, which is where the person wants to move forward but there's lots of things holding them back. It's like, yes, I want to stop doing XYZ, but
mm,
um and really being able to work with that. Okay, what part of you wants to, which part of you doesn't, and really having a dialogue between those two parts can really be useful in shifting that stuckness and understanding what's going on and what's holding them back, and not giving that voice to both sides is really important.
mm,
So yeah, that's the background of motivational interviewing, and it was really handy in my work with employers,
mm-hmm.
clients, and now also in coaching I use that quite a lot as well.
Okay, okay. That's really interesting. And yeah, I can so relate. Like you have like two parts or multiple parts, like, oh, part of you want to do this, but like part of you are
Mhm.
scared of doing this. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, I love what you said about how that motivational interviewing can help with that.
Mm.
So is this what you're currently doing as well, or are you mainly coaching at the moment?
I'm doing employment advice and coaching. Yes,
Coaching. Okay.
I'm mainly doing employment advice, but there is a real overlap. Leadership coaching and then all of the kind of mental health employment advice, um, they very much complement each other and very similar skill set, and you're dealing with quite similar themes that come up in both roles that I do. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you have any kind of, so I know you mentioned earlier on when you were studying the foundation course in psychodynamic psychotherapy course. You said you were the youngest and you felt
Mhm.
like you and was that a little bit of imposter syndrome because you
Oh yeah.
felt you're the youngest and you feel like
Yeah.
you haven't kind of experienced enough.
Yeah.
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 Did you find that in your career as well, in kind of early years in your
Mm.
career?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. um I remember kind of in the early years of working in mental health often feeling that way. And actually, it wasn't just my imagination. It was, I think, I remember also because I look quite young, and I was often working with middle-aged, people in their 50s.
Mm,
And I remember once a gentleman that I was working with, he was telling me his story, and, I offered some insight or advice. And, he said to me, with all due respect, love, what do you know? Like, it was a very much like, what can you tell me? You're so young. Like,
mm,
so there was, it wasn't just kind of internal, it was also
mm,
um on a couple of occasions when I wasn't as experienced or confident, probably what my understanding of how the client was perceiving me and the advice or direction that I was giving.
mm. And may I ask what was your reaction or how did you respond when this gentleman said that to you?
It was a long time ago. Um, yeah, I don't recall, but I guess I probably would have said something along the lines, I would have maybe explored what made him say that.
Mm.
And in a really kind of non-defensive way, just go into kind of what knowledge and experience I have in the advice that I'm giving, and also that it's invitational only, that he takes my advice. It's not essential, but I'm offering it based on my experience and knowledge. Would have been something along those lines. But I did find it, yeah, I would have felt uncomfortable. I know that.
Yeah. As I was listening to you, like I wouldn't know how to react to that if someone said that to me. Um, and then and the funny story of mine is not funny story, is interesting thing that I would share is that I wanted to be a coach in my 20s as well. So I was looking
Yeah,
into like coaching
yeah.
certification in my early 20s, and then I thought like, oh, how would I be able to like how would I be able to coach someone when
Yeah,
I'm only like 22, 23? So
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't do the training in the end. But yeah, I was just thinking about that as well.
Yeah,
Or the kind of the imposter syndrome that comes with
yeah.
age.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
and lack of experience. Yeah, is
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And so over the years, how did you overcome that imposter syndrome or the
Mm.
confidence?
I think it's just time, time, experience. Um, I've I've had a lot of I've invested a lot over the years in my personal development and professional development. Um, I've had a lot of therapy to um, unlearn some of my limiting beliefs. And just really kind of being proactive about my professional development over time. Like, I after a certain point, I never encountered that reaction from a client just because of
Mm-hmm.
how I was showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And there may have been something about how I was showing up in my early 20s in that role that did elicit that reaction from certain clients. So yeah, that there was a sort of more in a quiet confidence in myself
Mm,
that probably clients picked up on and felt just safer, maybe. Yeah.
yeah. And do you still feel that sometimes, like feeling a bit lack of confidence or imposter syndrome now, or do you not feel that at all?
Less so, but it depends on what I'm doing and
Mm,
how much it's out of my comfort zone or not. So if I'm going into a new situation or speaking to people that I perceive as being more senior than me, it can come up, um, but less so. Yeah, it's definitely natural and normal for me when I'm doing something that I haven't done before.
mm, yes. And I guess did that come up with like starting to do coaching? Because
Mm.
yeah. How
On the
long?
course, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How long ago was it that you've done your coaching and started coaching as
It
well?
was only a year ago,
Oh, okay.
just over a year. Yeah, so quite new. But I remember starting my diploma, and part of the diploma was sort of doing role plays in threes every
Mm-hmm.
single day of the course, and that always put me out of my comfort zone,
Mm,
because it was learning something really new, and it was also the sort of pressure of being observed and
yes.
putting that pressure on yourself of like, I've got to say the right thing, I've got to ask, a very profound question in this moment. And yeah, so it was coming up during the course. But I think when I passed my course and I was just starting to do my coaching kind of one-to-one, less so. Yeah.
Mm, Yeah, and I guess with your employment advisor role as
Mm,
well, I guess I'm sure it does come naturally, with you, I guess, like, working with people one to one,
mm,
or, having that conversation.
yeah,
Because I'm sure you'll be asking different question in
yeah,
your employment advisor role as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I can be more direct in that. So with
Mm,
coaching, I'm not direct, but I sort of facilitate and
mm.
sit back more. It's not really my role to advise. So they
Yes,
are
yeah.
completely different skill sets.
Mhm.
Well, they're completely different in that, but they do. One does help me in the other for
Mm.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you most love about your job?
Mm. Hmm. Um, right. Um, Quite a lot of things, really. It's so just the fact that it's a real passion of mine from a young age, working with people.
Mhm.
But I think over the years, I feel how much of an honor and privilege that it is to be trusted with people's vulnerabilities, um, deepest fears, thoughts, challenges. Um, for me, it's a real honor that people put that trust in me, and I really am privileged. I feel very privileged in that. Um, it's also, I think, gratitude is a big thing for me to kind of, as part of my daily kind of practice of, meditation or just reflection, what I'm thankful for. And I think the work that I do and hearing people's experience just constantly makes me realize to be thankful for everything that I have. And also it can be quite inspiring to um, see how people that experience really profound difficulties and challenges and traumas, how they overcome, or just how they deal with that and overcome it. For me, it's quite inspiring, um, and just making a difference, seeing kind
Mm.
of small shifts in their how they show up or how they see themselves is so like rewarding. I love it. And also I think a big part of what I love about what I do, um, is really like I'm able to be fully authentic and
Mm.
show up fully as me. Like I don't have to compartmentalize, because actually everything that I bring is relevant in terms of how I coach and how I work with people. So I really like that. And I think I'd really struggle, to have to compartmentalize. Yeah. So all of those
Yeah.
things I really love. Mm.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah,
Mm. And also,
Mhm.
sorry, also
Mm.
I just forget, I learn so much from my clients. It's also like a lot of learning for me,
Mm.
that I learn from my clients and different perspectives. And yeah, sorry I
Yeah.
interrupted you.
No, no, not at all. And yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because I do feel like, and I guess, well, we all work with people, I guess,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
like the coaching and counseling, you
Mm.
know, or employment advisor role, any of those kind of where you work with people one to one, or it can be group setting, but like it's kind of, and I feel like this as a yoga teacher as well, is that
Mhm.
like thing, it's kind of your own personal development doing this
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
I feel.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's always really like amazing to see
Yeah.
your own growth
Yeah.
and the people that you're working with,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always
Yeah.
lovely to
Yeah.
see that
Yeah.
change and growth.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's something about being and witnessing someone go through or doing deep work on themselves, which you can't help but learn from it, and you can't help but be humbled by it. So yeah, completely
Yes.
agree.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I like to be talking with you for
I
many
know.
more hours. But um,
Yeah.
so I have a kind of final questions that I like to
Mm,
ask.
mm,
Um, so do you have, and I think this is great coming from like employment advisor side
mm,
of you, but do you have any advice to those who want to change their career path completely?
mm. Um, right. I did write some stuff down for this. Right. And yeah, if they're kind of experiencing challenges,
Yeah.
I think a couple of things really. Really kind of getting in touch with why it's important to you, and just getting in touch with that desire and that kind of drive, and why you're doing it. One thing that I find quite useful can be using like visualization techniques and imagery,
Mm,
um, to because quite often there can be a block with when we can't imagine us like achieving that dream, or reaching that goal. It can be quite hard to keep going. So having like a daily meditation practice, or just somewhere where you are able to cultivate and get in touch with um, imagining success, imagining what it would look like, what it would feel like to get there, can be a powerful motivator.
mm,
What else? Think really tuning in as well to what resources you already have, that what skills and resources you already have that can get you to where you want to be. And often people can lose sight of that. So that's another thing. And also, don't put pressure on yourself to be perfect.
mm,
um, Allow yourself to make mistakes. um, Failure is like a really great teacher, and you'll grow like profoundly through that. So yeah, just not expecting yourself to be perfect, and allowing yourself to make mistakes, and explore um, along the way. I think it would be my
mm.
advice.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Yeah, great advice. And yeah, especially I like the kind of visualization technique that imagining what it would be like or feel like. Yeah, it's a great way to get in touch with like where you
Mm,
want to be. And yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
So what future ambitions do you have? What's next for you?
Mm. So I'm quite new to my journey in being a coach.
Mm,
So I definitely really love to just grow that side of things. Carry on coaching leaders,
mhm,
potential leaders. Continue to do kind of organizational development work around
mhm,
leadership, systemic stuff around race, is coming up, and I'm developing some work around that. Um, so yeah, growing that side of things, growing my
mhm.
business, getting way more experience and learning in being a coach. And I sometimes think down the line I'd quite like to start a blog, um,
Mhm.
maybe also start a podcast,
Yes.
down the line. But yeah, those are my hopes for the sort of near future. Yeah.
Mm,
um,
thank you.
and
No,
just
that's.
continuing to learn. It's never ending, the learning.
Yes, yeah, I do always say like, oh, I'm a eternal student of everything,
Yes,
really.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
love learning
exactly.
as well. So yeah, and
Mm.
yeah, definitely with coaching and you
Yeah,
learn so much from it as well.
definitely.
Just had a question that I wanted to ask you. What is
Mm.
it that you are interested in because you mentioned you're interested in, well, you're already doing this, but you're coaching leaders and potential
Mhm,
leaders. Is there
mhm.
any kind of specific reason or, yeah, anything you like to share around why you want to work with leaders and potential leaders?
I think being a mental health employment advisor and hearing, working on cases where compassionate leadership has really been lacking, and how that impacts on people and organizations. I think it's important work, like the future leaders of, corporations and charities and public sector bodies are like at the forefront of shaping like the work environment and wider, really. Um, so I think it's important work and it's really rewarding. I think that's my main reason for wanting to
Mm,
continue that. And also, I guess my coaching style is quite therapeutic, and I'm not so much about the bottom line and productivity. Actually, my
mm.
clients a lot of the time bring to me wanting to be more authentic, wanting to be more compassionate, um, and so yeah, again, for me, that's a real honor to be shaping the future leaders of
Mm.
kind of business and society, really, and creating a nice working environment for people and where they feel safe to show up and be themselves and bring their best selves. So yeah, that's why I'd like to continue with that.
I love, 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 love that. Compassionate leaders and
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, supporting
Yeah,
leaders and potential leaders to be more compassionate and yeah, and shape the organization and be them, be the like authentic self.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really important. And yeah, we definitely need that in our
yeah,
society
we
and
do.
in our corporate environment. So
Yeah,
yeah, your work is
exactly.
definitely needed.
Yeah. And I guess we're at a time as well that
Mm,
statistically, um, record numbers of people are off work due to mental
mm,
health. And it's kind of a public health crisis. It's a bit of a crisis.
mm,
And I'm not saying leaders are the only reason. Obviously, there's lots of reasons why people, that the lack of availability of therapy and other support. But the working environment can have a profound difference, make a profound difference to one's experiences of working when you have either a mental health or a physical health condition.
yes, yeah, agree. And yeah, I was just thinking like what you said about your coaching kind of style
Hmm.
as well, that
Hmm.
you're not focusing on like doing so much or productivity. And I definitely feel that from you,
Oh,
working with
that's
you as
great.
well. And
Yeah,
yeah, and I
thank
think
you.
kind of the traditional leaders are
Mm.
like it's all about high performance,
Yeah,
productivity, and
yeah,
doing a lot of things.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's kind of, what they praised, their
Hmm.
employees on as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
absolutely.
love that you're
Yeah.
making difference in that
Thank you so
area.
much. Thank you
Thank
so much. And
you.
obviously, it's a pleasure to work with you also.
Mm, thank you, me too. And wow, thank you so much for sharing all of
Oh,
that. And I feel like I got to know you a lot better. And
I
yeah,
know.
really.
Yes,
So
role
yeah,
reversal. Thank you so
yes,
much for inviting me onto your podcast. And yeah, I hope your listeners enjoy.
yes, yeah, me too. And so if the listeners want to get in touch with you, where can people find you?
Um, what would be best is connecting on LinkedIn. So if
Mhm.
you could just my full name in the show notes.
Yeah.
I think it will come up as leadership coach.
Okay.
Please feel free to connect with me on there, send me a message. Be great to hear from people.
Amazing, thank you. And do you have a website now, or are
No,
you
not
still
at the
in process?
moment.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, not at the moment.
Okay, well, yeah. Do send me your website when it's
Yes,
ready, or
will do.
when you that's completed. Oh, thank you
Yeah,
so
I
much.
will. Thank you so much, Rita.
Yeah,
Have a great weekend.
you too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to my conversation with Reshma as much as I did. It was really inspiring to hear her journey and the why behind her passion for working with leaders and future leaders. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and leave a review so we can reach as many people as possible. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next episode.